Justice can be slow, and then it can also be swift. 2 months to the day after the U.S. Justice Department first started releasing the Epstein files, the arrest of King Charles's brother. Andrew had already been stripped of his titles over allegations of relations with sex-trafficked minors. Now he stands accused of leaking state secrets to the disgraced financier from the time when his late mother had pushed for his appointment as trade envoy. What consequences for Andrew, for the British monarchy, and for institutions already rattled by Peter Mandelson's appointment as the current Prime Minister's ambassador to the United States, even though he too stands accused of leaking inside information to Epstein during the financial crisis. Will this arrest restore faith or further fuel cynicism? Moreover, will the arrest of Andrew force Donald Trump's Justice Department to come clean over what's still unreleased and to pursue wrongdoers in an impartial manner? Whether it's sex trafficking, trading state secrets, or tax evasion, who is above the law and who is not? Today in the France 24 debate, will it be justice for all? We'll be joined by, from Hereford in Western England, by historian Ed Owens, author of After Elizabeth, Can the Monarchy Save Itself? With us now from New York, investigative reporter Barry Levine, the author of The Spider, Inside the Tangled Web of Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
For also in New York City, former U.S. federal prosecutor Frederick Davis, lecturer in law at Columbia University. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
You can always listen, that's right, listen to the France 24 debate wherever podcasts are streamed. Now, even though there are no fewer than 9 inquiries by police forces in England and Wales surrounding Andrew, our correspondent, Bénédicte Paviot, was telling us earlier, the shock is palpable after news that the Thames Valley Police had descended on the King's private Sandringham estate. That's where Andrew had recently relocated after being chased from Windsor Castle. Searches at both locations. Yinka Oyetade has more.
Arrested on his 66th birthday on suspicions of misconduct in public office. The man once known as His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, and now simply called Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, was arrested on Thursday morning by British police. Unmarked cars pulled up to the Sandringham estate, and searches were also carried out in Berkshire and Norfolk. Police have now opened an investigation. As is standard, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was not named in the police report, which noted that the Thames Valley Police had arrested a man in his 60s and taking him into custody. The investigation is centered on claims that emerged in the Epstein files relating to Andrew's time as trade envoy. He appeared to have sent sensitive government emails to Epstein as well as other friends in the finance world. The Epstein files also appear to show that he forwarded official reports to the paedophile about trips to Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam and China in November of 2010.
Following a thorough assessment, we have now opened an investigation into this allegation of misconduct in public office. We understand the significant public interest in this case, and we will provide updates at the appropriate time.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has previously denied any wrongdoing in regard to accusations of having sex with a minor or in regard to his friendship with Epstein. But with the release of a fresh trove of documents, including an image of him leaning over a young woman, pressure had been mounting against him. Hours before the news broke of the arrest, the British Prime Minister said even members of the royal family are not above the law.
One of the core principles in our system is that everybody is equal under the law and nobody is above the law. And it is really important that that is applied across the board.
It was still business as usual for King Charles III, who continued with public engagements Thursday.
Good afternoon, Your Majesty.
Do you have any reaction to the arrest of your brother, sir?
He was greeted with questions about his brother's arrest as he arrived at London Fashion Week. Earlier, King Charles had released a statement expressing his deepest concern, adding that the law must take its course. Not since 1647, with the arrest of King Charles I during the English Civil War, has a member of the British royal family been arrested.
As promised, we're also joined by Ed Owens, who's with us from Hereford in Western England. Thanks for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Good evening. Great to be with you.
And Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, columnist at the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph. Paris traffic could not keep you away on this day.
Yes.
Let me begin with you, Ed. Were you shocked when you heard the news that Andrew was being questioned and is detained?
Yes and no. I was slightly shocked by the timing of the arrest. However, I felt that after the King's statement last week, where he made it very clear that he would cooperate with the authorities in the event that there was a formal investigation, I think it was clear from that point onwards that this was a clear likelihood that an arrest could take place, and that therefore the King was willing to cooperate with the authorities in this instance.
And the King, again, as we saw in that report, sticking to his public schedule, going to a fashion show. What does that tell you?
Fashion Week.
Indeed. Well, this is about business as usual for the British royal family. A clear emphasis that despite the trauma of this unfolding crisis, that the rest of the family are rallying together in order to put on, a united front, demonstrating to the public that the work of the monarchy goes on uninterrupted.
Again, as we saw in that report, it's about the sex and it's about leaking state secrets. The former Prince Andrew was trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. He is accused of leaking sensitive government documents and commercial information. The Mail on Sunday reported how after a 2010 trip by Andrew as trade envoy to China, Jeffrey Epstein's aide David Stern plotted with the late pedophile to do, quote, discreet deals with the Chinese. Ed Owens, is this treason?
I don't think it's treason in any way. I think what is clearly at stake here is potentially misconduct in public office, that Andrew essentially abused potentially his public role as a UK trade envoy, benefiting from this position, given that he was sent on trade missions on behalf of the United Kingdom's government, and then relaying information, sensitive, confidential information to confidants, including Epstein. That is what is at stake here. The issue clearly, I think, is potential impropriety on Andrew's part if he is indeed found to have communicated information that was confidential and sensitive to the wrong people.
Barry Levine, after the research that you did for your book, the revelations that have started coming out, again, 2 months ago today was when the U.S. Department of Justice began releasing documents. Is it worse than you thought, or is it just confirm your suspicions?
Well, we're certainly learning horrific new details from the documents that we've been reviewing. I mean, again, there's 3 million documents. There's 2 million that are still missing. But what we're finally getting, and what is most satisfying to me, having interviewed so many of the survivors over the years, is that there's finally an international reckoning of this case.
I can
we
hear
have
you
investigations.
Go ahead,
yes, I
Barry
can.
Levine.
We're having it. Yes, we're having investigations not only in your own country, but of course in England with former Prince Andrew, Norway. So many other countries are finally stepping up and investigating political individuals, financial individuals related to the findings in these files. So this is a long time coming. But I applaud all the efforts that are taking place, and I know that the survivors are particularly happy today because former Prince Andrew is in custody. They, of course, would have liked him to be in custody related to the allegations made by at least one victim of 3 instances of sexual abuse with her. There was also groping involving another survivor. But this has opened up the fact, even though this is about him sharing government reports from visits to Vietnam, Singapore, and China to Epstein. In addition to that, investment opportunities in gold and uranium in Afghanistan, relating to his role as the UK envoy. Everything is off the table now, depending on what the investigators there may find in his own computers. In addition to that, will they find any incriminating photos or videotapes? So, you know, this is just beginning, and I do hope that they do perform a absolutely thorough investigation into former Prince Andrew. And it's unfortunate that here in the U.S. we don't have the same type of reckoning from the top of the government that is taking place.
Let's get to the U.S. in a moment. I first want to just get the ramifications here, what it means for the House of Windsor. As you just said, an important point. There were searches done both at Sandringham and at Windsor Castle. Andrew, it's been a while that he's been the black sheep of the family, and even in the pro-royals tabloids. We could show you, for instance, the cover of last Saturday's Daily Mirror, where the current Prince of Wales distances himself from Andrew. A stain on the family was that headline. But there's also revelations regarding the help that Andrew continued to get along the way. Queen Elizabeth and her late husband coughing up most of the £12 million to settle with Virginia Giuffre in 2022, including $1.5 million at the time from then Prince Charles. Now, the Sun puts in its headline, oh, he hasn't paid any of it back. But still, Charles is doing his best to distance himself from his brother. And Elisabeth Moutet, how much can he distance himself from it? And is this a real problem for the royalty as a whole?
It's a problem, but yes, he wanted to distance himself, and Prince William has wanted to distance himself from his uncle a very long time ago. He thinks he's sleazy. I mean, he was perfectly aware of what it was like, possibly not with the abuse of women, but all the rest. It was perfectly obvious that he and his ex-wife, who's, you know, they're closer than many people who are still married to one another, were interested mostly in money and advantages and free trips and, you know, free plane trips on private planes and stuff like that. I disagree with one of the participants about the fact that it's not treason. Some of the documents that were immediately forwarded by Andrew about Epstein were the documents after the visit to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is of great matter to China. At the time when he was doing this, I think China had not completed the political takeover of the territory, which is already part of China. It was supposed to be one country, two systems. And that's the time of the transition. And the fact that any way, shape or form in which you can have probably, you know, there were some of those documents were summaries of the meetings that were established not by Andrew, who's not capable of that. They were established by civil servants and diplomats. And so they were explaining very much. The way they explained it is a wonderful cue for the Chinese, should they get access to it, of how Britain is going to react to some things, where the weaknesses are, where the disinclination to. Are
you shocked by that?
I'm extremely shocked by this.
I don't
think he quite understood what he was doing, because, you know, he's not a very, very clever bloke. But I'm absolutely shocked by the fact that whenever he was somewhere, there was the concentrate of not just the business policy, but the political outlook that was leading that business policy in various places where he was, and that was passed on without any kind of redaction, whatever. It was just sort of sent over to Epstein, who could use it for any kind of influence trafficking that he wanted to do.
Yeah, and we heard Barry Levine touch upon it. Of course, the sex trafficking aspect of it, allegations surrounding 3 underage girls. These are not proven in court, but they're allegations, including Virginia Giuffre when she was 17. Ghislaine Maxwell acting as the conduit, if you will. Ghislaine Maxwell, whose money came from her media tycoon father, the high-flying Robert Maxwell. And Elisabeth Moutet, we can go back to 1990, perhaps show, there you see her at the Cannes Film Festival in the company of the late Maxwell, and go back to 1990 and show a picture of the enthusiastically pro-EU Robert Maxwell at the Strasbourg launch of his new newspaper at the time, The European, and Elisabeth.
Where I used to work. And I was the Paris bureau chief for the 9 months that Maxwell was alive and the thing was kicking. And then it was bought by, Maxwell died, it was bought by the Barclay brothers, and we went on for 8 more years. So it was actually, it was
a great paper.
It was a pan-European paper, and it was a great paper, and it was also a very good place to work at. But what's interesting about this is that the officers, the early officers, were in the same building on Rue des Écoles near the Sorbonne, where the Maxwells had the family flat. And so Ghislaine, aged, early 20s, would every now and then sort of rush into the office, imperiously asking people to do stuff for her that had nothing got to do with their jobs. And I used to type my pieces on a computer, and I hoped every time she came in, I hoped that she would mistake me for a secretary. But she asked the man who was in charge of international advertising one day to go and get her mother's car, which had broken down in Fontainebleau, and so you go and organize this so that my mother gets her car fixed back. And another time she rang up from the Ritz Hotel, and she said, I'm at the Ritz. The service is awful. Call them and shout at them. I mean, that was the kind of woman she was in her early 20s. She may have changed, but she was the most spoiled brat in existence at the time.
So, an entitled socialite.
Yes.
We've been talking about Andrew, who to a degree was also an entitled socialite of a different order.
Yes.
How does this all lead to all of this?
Maxwell gave money to Oxford University. His residence was in Oxford. It was actually leased from the council, and it was a sort of former historic house. And he managed to get his daughter into Balliol, and I do not know whether she had the qualifications to get into one of the best colleges and most prestigious colleges at Oxford. But she certainly got there, and she certainly used it. I don't even know what she read there. But she made lots of connections there, and she never stopped. She was a great networker. She admired her father. She wanted, in many ways, she was very much like him. She was mercurial, difficult, and absolutely interested in making connections. And everybody who met her who was not the help, which, the European people were seen by her as being the help, she was, I'm told, quite charming and fun and amusing and fun to be with. And when her father died, and nobody knows how he died, whether it was a stroke, whether it was suicide, some people said there was, an assassination conducted in the high seas on the boat. She was devastated. She was also devastated because he was ruined. So suddenly there was no money at all because he spent everything on his various companies and he couldn't meet his obligations. And she moved to America, where she met Epstein, and Epstein reminded her in many ways of her father.
And so, Barry Levine, this is in your book, you talk about how it's all about networking in the end. When does networking turn to something so dark?
Well, this was the thing with Jeffrey Epstein and using Ghislaine, in the sense that, particularly for the recruitment of girls for Epstein, Ghislaine meshed with him in the sense that she presented herself with him as a protector, a big sister, a mother-like figure, and she was nothing but. She recruited these victims, and as she later told a friend who I quoted in my book, she referred to these girls as nothing but trash. She had no empathy at all for the victimization and the criminality that was taking place. But she played a very important role with Jeffrey Epstein, and that included the recruitment of rich and powerful men around the world that Jeffrey Epstein would use to take advantage of, and in my belief and many others, for blackmail purposes, to gain money and other things that he needed. This was so wide. It's unbelievable in terms of what we're seeing from the documents. We knew about a core group of men in his circle, but the tentacles that we're seeing now that have branched out all over the world is absolutely unbelievable to me.
And you talked about it earlier. It's not just the British royals. Ties between Epstein and Norway's crown princess were already known. Now documents reveal that Mette-Marit and Crown Prince Haakon borrowed an Epstein-owned property in Palm Beach, Florida for several days in 2013. This after being convicted for soliciting sex with a minor. Former Prime Minister Torbjorn Jagland, whose home police raided last week in Oslo, faces a corruption investigation for dealings with Epstein when he was head of the Norwegian Nobel Committee and the head of the European and the Council of Europe, rather. And speaking of raids, French police this past Monday combing for evidence at the Arab World Institute, whose longtime boss resigned last week, iconic former culture minister Jacques Lang. Him and his film producer daughter suspected of benefiting from more than just helpful hints on tax optimization. Frederick Davis, I know that you hang your hat part of the time here in Paris. Your thoughts? We have these criminal probes taking place on this side of the Atlantic. How's it going where you are?
Well, criminal probes, look, we have the distinction of having a president who's a convicted felon. He was convicted not related to Epstein, but was related to sex. He forged fake documents to hide sex with a porn star. Look, the Epstein thing, as everybody said, is fascinating in terms of the number of people that got caught up by this guy who was a genius at making money and then using it to buy influence, and then also used young women to have influence. And a lot of reputations are being changed and ruined. The issue we don't know yet is what impact is going to be on Trump. He's unlikely to learn. We're unlikely to learn that he committed a further crime out of this at this point. Oddly, he seems immune to a lot of bad news on his impact on his reputation, other than with respect to the Epstein stuff. And even his base seems very concerned that he crossed some terrible lines with respect to young women. So it's clear to me that his Justice Department is dragging this out as long as they can. There's some reason to believe that the trove of unreleased documents, the 3 million that we don't know about, may well contain allegations concerning Trump. Whether enough comes out that really changes the course of the momentum that he still has among his base, where still a lot of people are going to resist having him diminished in terms of his authority, remains to be seen.
So let me ask you a practical question here. Last week, the deputy head of the Justice Department said, well, there's still more to come. Some estimating that there could be double the numbers of documents that still are to be released. And then we had the head of the Attorney General, who's effectively the Minister of Justice, if you will. She's now said, "Oh no, that's all for now, folks." So which one is it, and are you expecting more?
Who knows? Look, let me share my opinion. I don't believe anything they say, very frankly. I mean, Pam Bondi has said any number of things. It's fairly clear, just in terms of looking at the documents and the dates on them, that there are a lot of documents we don't have. It could well be that the chronological set of documents we don't have are during the period when a number of younger women whose names are unknown were making their complaints about various men who violated them under Epstein's authority. And that was during the chronological period when we know Trump was very close to Epstein. So to me, there's a strong possibility that there are documents out there that put Trump in a very, very unflattering light. And so very, very clear to me that Pam Bondi and everybody around her are doing whatever they can to keep us from knowing them.
And just to ask about how slow or fast justice is. 2018 is when the heat starts to get turned up on Epstein. He dies in prison shortly after that. Then we have investigations going on behind closed doors. We have the conviction of Virginia Giuffre. But really, everything seems to have gone into fast forward since the release of these documents the last 2 months. Was justice too slow before that?
Well, yeah, look, Epstein and Trump, both of them were very good at gaming the system. Epstein reached a deal 20 years ago.
But there was 4 years of Joe Biden, and there was 4 years of Joe Biden in between. Couldn't the justice have gone quicker during those years?
Well, certainly, yes and no. Look, under Joe Biden, Attorney General Merrick Garland, whom I know quite well, started a very thoughtful, painful, and slow investigation of Donald Trump, which ended up not going anyplace. There are a number of people who criticize Attorney General Garland for that. I don't. I think if you're going to go after the president, you have to do it very, very carefully. And Trump just gamed the system. In terms of whether more investigations could have come out about related to Epstein, I'm just not sure. We haven't seen that. You know, Ghislaine Maxwell was, as you pointed out, prosecuted because we knew what the case was against her. I haven't seen that many other criminal cases coming out of the Epstein stuff. The real scandal is that Trump never faced justice on the insurrection claim and on the misuse of public documents. You know, the evidence on that was very, very strong, in my opinion, and he never faced justice on that.
Ed Owens, again, it's about heads of state, whether they're monarchs or presidents. It's very delicate how you dance. Again, we're talking on the day when the eighth in line to the throne has been arrested in the UK.
Yes, but maybe not for much longer. I think already the king has signaled very clearly that he will not put up any resistance should the government come forward with legislation to remove Andrew formally now from the line of succession. And I think that's probably, that is where we're logically headed. That was reported last week in the Times of London, whereas before King Charles had said something along the lines of, I don't want parliamentarians to waste their time discussing that they would remove a member of the royal family from the line of succession. But then it was put out that in fact the king would do nothing to put up resistance. In fact, I think they will probably be actively encouraging the parliamentarians in Westminster to get on and legislate to formally remove him from the line of succession, because that will look a lot better for the monarchy, full stop.
All right, so they're taking action in the UK. On Capitol Hill last week, there was a lot of arguing, and Frederick Davis alluded to it, where you had the head of the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, challenging the right of a congressional panel to even question her over the unruly partial release of those Epstein files. So many still under wrap. This is how the boss says, for now, can only take his word on the matter.
I have nothing to hide. I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They went in hoping that they'd find it and found just the opposite. I've been totally exonerated. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was fighting that I don't get elected with some author, a sleazebag, by the way, and I've been totally exonerated.
Barry Levine, again, your thoughts on the contrast between the UK and the United States?
Yeah, I would just want to point out quickly that I don't think he's really been exonerated in terms of the president. We know that according to the files, that one underage alleged victim was interviewed 3 or 4 times by the FBI. We don't know the extent of the specifics of that, and I do think that there's more material in the 2 million files that we have yet to see. The president has had a 15-year relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. We learned recently that he alerted Palm Beach police after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest that a lot of local people knew about this. It raises questions as to when he knew and did he ever take any action to bring this to the attention of authorities. But I'm hoping to see now that what's happening here in the U.S. is that particular states are going after investigations. For instance, in New Mexico, there was some information in the files that two young girls may have been killed and buried near his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Now, officials there are taking the action to do a full investigation on this. And so we need to see this all over the United States, because Epstein had tentacles in to many individuals, and there was wrongdoing. And mostly here in the U.S., but also internationally, there are 20 men that Representative Thomas Massie, who was spearheaded the Transparency Act in Washington, he said that there were 20 men who took part in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. 6 billionaires, one of them in Canada, a wealthy individual in Italy, a former politician, a government official. We have not seen all the details on these men. There are FBI, what's called 302 witness reports that would have the details on what actions the FBI took to investigate these men. And, you know, it's troubling. Just yesterday, in fact, Jeffrey Epstein's main financial benefactor, Leslie Wexner, was finally grilled by the Oversight Committee in Ohio, and he acknowledged that he had not been interviewed until 2019. And that is flabbergasting in the sense that this was a key individual who for almost 2 decades escaped any type of scrutiny, even though he claims he was not aware of Epstein's wrongdoing. So there's still so much that needs to be done.
And Elisabeth Moutet, you were with us 2 weeks ago. In those 2 weeks, a lot more has come out. And because it's taking a long time to sift through these 3 million documents.
Even with AI.
Even with AI, especially with AI, some might say. And there's the question is, as in those 2 weeks, do you feel as though, again, and with the news today, more faith in the justice system, that in the end, you know, when there's wrongdoing of this magnitude, you do face the consequences, or will this fuel more cynicism?
I wouldn't say there's more cynicism. I mean, lots of stuff is coming out. It's coming out in a very disordered way, and I think this is by design. I'm told that there's about another 3 million plus documents that haven't been sort of released, and, you know, I don't see anybody calling for their release now because they're still working on what's been released. I also think that we are seeing something that took place over a quarter century, and the world was a different place. So women did not get justice at the time, and they do now, we hope. They were not taken seriously. Models who sort of found themselves having affairs with billionaires in a flat on Avenue Foch, and sort of 8,000 square feet flat on Avenue Foch, the swankiest
where
avenue
Jeffrey Epstein
in Paris. His apartment. Well, what's wrong with having hanky-panky with a billionaire? Well, this is not the way people look at this anymore. So I think eventually it will all come out. The other thing is that the one thing that was not so obvious in the beginning was the incredible network of Jeffrey Epstein, which is all about influence peddling and sort of compulsive need to make connections. I mean, one thing that we found out very recently in the Daily Mail of London is that it's Epstein who introduced, it's Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, who introduced Epstein to Mohammed bin Zayed, the president and sheikh of Dubai and president of the United Arab Emirates, who is a leading politician in the Gulf. And very obviously, Andrew wanted to show that he knew people too, and he made those connections, which tells you everything about how useful he was, because he did meet lots of people, if only on state visits in Buckingham Palace and returning state visits. So I don't think we know enough about this, but the horrible thing is that all those poor girls who were horribly mistreated were a commodity to Epstein. a commodity to these men. They were not the main story. They should have been the main story, but they're not the main story because they were just one of the various ways, like the private planes and the invitations and the money to help Sarah Ferguson pay rent and whatever.
And here, in this case, the criminal charges are about his duties as a trade envoy, not about the sex trafficking yet.
No, because he had an arbitration and a settlement out of court with Virginia Giuffre. And it is there's a legal document that came out of it where, she would no longer sue him and she would receive, I reported, 10 to 12 million pounds. And you can imagine that somebody who'd been sort of trying to reconstruct herself and fight against this in such difficult circumstances, it may not have been such a bad agreement, but that also means that if you want to sort of reintroduce this as a judicial case, it's not oven ready, Boris Johnson would say. It's not possible. Other women who now come to the fore and are finally listened to, that would be something else. But it wasn't something that would have warranted the former Prince Andrew being arrested this morning. It was only this morning. It's the influence and in politics and international politics and trade, and it's also the discovery that he made his own country vulnerable.
Frederick Davis, something interesting in what Elisabeth said about the fact that, there are things that you could get away with before that you can no longer get away with. In the end, the insider trading, the selling state secrets, is that an easier conviction than the sex trafficking ones? In the end, what will be I guess you could say, the top of the bill?
Well, there's two separate subjects. There's the subject of the law as it should be, and the subject of the law under Donald Trump. And I hate to sound cynical, but I really am. Look, prosecuting insider trading, which I'm very familiar with, prosecuting sex crimes, which I'm not so familiar with, those are straightforward enough cases. We know how to do it. The problem with the Justice Department, and I'll be very cynical in expressing an opinion, is the current Justice Department is essentially corrupt to the core. The cases they are bringing are against Trump's enemies. And I've looked in great detail at a case against James Comey, who's head of the FBI, against our Attorney General here in New York. And I've really read every document filed on them. They are incompetently done, they're badly done, and they're totally politically motivated. And so when Pam Bondi appears in Congress and sort of gets into this cage fight against the Congress people in Congress, she's just there representing her client. And her client is not me as a citizen of the United States. It's not the people of the United States. Her client is Donald Trump.
And that brings us to what's going to happen next week. Former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary are up before the House of Representatives Oversight Committee. The former First Lady, who lost in the race for president to Trump in 2016, well, she spoke to the BBC.
What we're seeing, I think it's fair to say, is a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. In fact, when the Attorney General testified last week, it was quite a scene because she refused to answer questions.
Do you regret the links that there have been?
You know, we have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Barry Levine, your thoughts on how it will go next week? Will everyone who's to the right believe one story and everyone's to the left believe another?
Well, I definitely think that's the case because this has become so politicized. To begin with, the only reason that they're being called is because Trump is going after his enemies. He wanted to go after Bill Clinton, and they're doing that now. He's trying to put him through the mud, even though, let's remember, for the sake of history here, that Donald Trump had a 15-year relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, where they socialized a great deal. We also have allegations from three women talking about, and one in particular that disturbs me, a groping incident that took place that she alleged with Donald Trump right in front of Jeffrey Epstein while he was in the room. We don't have allegations like that against former President Clinton. We do know from the files that there was a photograph of him in a swimming pool or a hot tub with a young woman. We don't know all the circumstances of that. At the very least, it's embarrassing. I don't know if there's anything more to it. Go ahead.
No, we're listening.
Yeah. No. So I mean, we need to focus on the individuals, to me, that are really important in moving this case along. For instance, the Oversight Committee interviewing Leslie Wexner yesterday was extremely important, and I want to see the Oversight Committee really take to task bringing in the two co-executors of Jeffrey Epstein's estate, his lawyer and his longtime accountant, Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. These were men that have been with Jeffrey Epstein from the very beginning. There was a lot of financial questions over. Senator Ron Wyden said that Jeffrey Epstein put forward more than $1 billion in suspicious wire transactions to individuals. These two men, while they deny any wrongdoing, are right in the middle of that. They put Jeffrey Epstein in a position to have 150 different bank accounts. Money was being filtered through not only U.S. banks, but Russian banks. So there's a lot for these men to speak about.
A lot to parse through. Ed Owens, quite the contrast, isn't it? In the United States, it's happening before congressional panels. It's quite performative. In the UK, we don't even know, the public doesn't know, where Andrew is being questioned at this time. It's a very different kind of investigation.
Yes, it is. A bit more quiet, a bit more discreet. I think a bit more British in that respect. The pressure ultimately for the police to act has come from both the public and the media. It's notable that the leading Republican organisation in the United Kingdom, Republic, reported Andrew to the police just over a week ago, specifically in relation to the documents that came out of the Epstein files regarding Andrew's time as a trade envoy, and this suggestion that he may have used his time as a trade envoy to gain information, which he then passed on to Epstein. So it's significant that a lot of that pressure groups like Republic have played an active role in pushing for a formal investigation as well. I think that Andrew's fall from grace, comparable also to the recent fall from grace of former Labour MP, former Labour MP and party grande Peter Mandelson, very, very significant that these two prominent individuals, public individuals of the last 30 years have, had their public careers completely derailed by this episode. And of course, in the pursuit of justice. Up until this point, it has been justice in the case of Andrew, as led by the media, and it now remains to be seen what the police make of Andrew's behaviour, his conduct, and they will have undertaken the interviews with him today. There might be further interviews with members of the British royal family. Certainly, the King has made clear that the Buckingham Palace will cooperate with the investigation, and therefore we could anticipate that evidence will be forthcoming, which might help the police with this inquiry.
All right, so a stress test for the House of Windsor, a stress test for UK politics. I want to thank you so much, Ed Owens, for being with us from Hereford. I want to thank Barry Levine and Frederick Davis in New York, and Elisabeth Moutet. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.